Hey everybody, welcome to a special edition of Comics That Influence. Today we're doing a comic that was made by one of us. I'm Jake and Kurt's here with me, and we work very diligently every weekend on the Turbo Pit Fighter comic, post-apocalyptic sci-fi story. But we also have our side projects, various side projects. And Kurt's labor of love for a while has been CROM the Barbarian. And I want to point out to people that, if you're doing your own comics, maybe you're an artist, but you don't have any writers that you're working with, maybe you don't have any particular characters. Um, what Kurt did was he reached back into the public domain. And since he's such a aficionado of sword and sorcery and Conan the Barbarian, um, he found from the annals of history CROM the Barbarian, and it just so happens that Kurt was already working with the work of Gardner Fox, Francis Gardner Fox, and believe it or not, he was the writer of CROM the Barbarian, former collaborator of Robert E. Howard. Kurt could give a little more color to the accurate description, but this is a great template for people to reach back into history, get yourself a public domain property, and you can not only represent and repackage the existing stuff, but you could, whatever's public domain, I should say, but you could create your own new stuff. Look at this. This is all brand new material that Kurt has created based on the Crom character. And so, I love this as a teacher because when you have a student and they're like, well, I like to draw, but I don't do any writing, or I don't know what character to use, or maybe like I want to draw a popular character, but I don't know if I'm allowed to. So this is a great example of what you can do. There's plenty of ideas and properties that have been around a long time and they're dormant and they need somebody to reach back and bring them back to life, to remind people of this material that's just laying around there extant, and then to add to it, to build on it. Um, from all the great characters that we know, they all started somewhere, and if they're not continually used, if they're not continually coming out with new material, then they can fall into obscurity. So there's that. And one other aspect that we're going to talk about this as we get into our discussions with Kurt is we're going to talk about the great concept of collabs and having this be open to collabs. Um, this means that Kurt has a couple of different artists that he found that are contributing art, and he's also working on some sequential comic series, pages, sequences. I'm trying not to say sequential sequences because that's two forms of the same word. But basically, he's working together with other artists to create more and more and more material besides all of this action-packed stuff that he created here. Um, Also, notice that he's got some prose here, and we're gonna get into this with Kurt, how he got some the existing writing and is and repackaging it. So, Kurt,
Ooh,
why don't you say hi to all the fine people out there as we go over your latest Crom release? This is for sale right now, and as you
yes.
listen to this, you could find this on cromthebarbarian.com. You could also find Kurt's other stuff at kurtbrugel.com, including the Turbo Pit Fighter, Turbo Teaser, the latest offerings. But what have you got, Kurt? What did I get wrong there?
Only one thing. So the connection between the the creator of Conan the Barbarian, or more appropriately, Conan the Cimmerian, is Robert E. Howard, who dies in 1936. And Gardner Francis Fox starts writing comic books in 1937. So they actually never collaborated.
Uh-huh.
The estate
Yeah.
of Robert E.
Already.
Howard was run by a gentleman by the name of Glenn Lord, and he wielded an iron fist. He was very particular about that. I think he did shy away from comic books until Roy Thomas convinced Marvel Stan Lee magazine's comics to do Conan the Barbarian in
Conan number one.
1970. So
Yeah.
to dodge the copyright infringement hassle, I believe there's no documentation, but um, uh, Gardner Fox and John Junta uh, got together and did this pulp insert. It was an insert into a pulp magazine called Out of This World Adventures. 10 pager for CROM the Barbarian, who is a, you know, flip of Conan the Cimmerian, which is now blonde haired, and, you know, so on and so forth. I am actually taking this character from the public domain and working him to become the god that Conan the Cimmerian worships. I've even laid out, I should say, the ending of CROM's story to then be picked up at the um, Conan swearing to CROM. I was actually telling my wife last week at lunch, and she was like, I don't understand anything that you just said, but it sounds really cool. So to tease everybody, I have this story laid out in this package of CROM Collected 2024 Revised Edition in 3 segments. The last segment being Transforming CROM, which is a 35-page prose story that was originally written by Gardner Fox for a Planet Stories called Wizard of Sharador, and I just converted it over to a more sword and sorcery from a wacky, wonky sci-fi journey. And each page is donned with a little illustration that has something to do with going on the pages. The original needed to be in here. I've been getting a lot of compliments, from people thanking me for doing a black and white version of the originals because they just translate so well. Here's a little bit of history about CROM the Barbarian being the first sword and sorcery comic book character. And then, of course, I worked on 4 stories for the youthful CROM. So it kind of gives me a play of structure. This is where he's just the dopey teenager who's fumbling through life, almost like a Tarzan type of character. Comes across Skullbiter, which is his sword in the Fox and Junta, and then ends up in this transforming place, which there is at the end of the story a pretty decent sized cliffhanger, and it's all to, as Jake mentioned, and it is published in this book, is to find collaborators. It's to find people, because my follow up, based on the success of sales for the month of August, will determine how Conan and CROM anthology will go. So I can't thank everybody enough in supporting me, because I'm running a campaign called Can CROM Sell 100 Copies Without Kickstarter? And without being too malicious, if you will, I have done Kickstarters in the past. I think Kickstarters are only good for one type of person or company. The ones that have a decent sized following, and that following has a core true fan, if you will, and will turn around and pledge to help support putting something together. But if you are a virtual unknown like I am, and you're expecting to have traffic come through Kickstarter to then get you money to then support your comic book, I think it's not a very healthy way of approaching it. So I do have my own website, which is called CROMthebarbarian.com. The sales of this book will always be there, which I'm a huge proponent for owning the traffic, which is a part of the marketing, the SEO. So when somebody searches for CROM the Barbarian on Google, they will ultimately, if not immediately, be placed in the world of CROMthebarbarian.com. So at the recording of this video on the 4th of August, which is the beginning of my campaign, I have sold 23 copies so far. And once again, I do want to thank people. But the whole can CROM sell 100 copies without Kickstarter is based on analysis over the years that I've found is every Kickstarter I've seen where the person was starting out as a comic book artist is basically they end up selling like 75 to 100 comic books. So I'm just kind of playing that off. But when it's all said and done, when your Kickstarter or your Indiegogo is completed, then all the SEO, all the attraction of somebody looking for your comic is to Kickstarter or Indiegogo, not your website. And that is something you really should not do. And if you are doing it, you need to pull away as a young getting started. And when I say young, I'm not saying like age wise. I'm saying like getting started. Like if you're in your 50s, like I was in my 40s when I got back into approaching the CROM material. I immediately established the CROM the Barbarian.com, and it was to be able to capture, if you will, the people and their interests for that. So yeah, I also wanted this video to be on the Turbo Pit Fighter channel with Jake, who was and is a great editor contributor to this volume. There are videos on CROMthebarbarian.com because I have run a weekly blog that's having conversations with the guest artist and Jake in getting feedback about pages and the flow and the text, and maybe you want to do this and don't want to do this. So I can't thank Jake enough as not only the collaborator on Turbo, but also being an editor in contributing, which once again, if you're really into comics and you have ideas and some skills or any kind of contribution, I think is great in comics. And I really think that's how comics are structured. I know for the most of us, Jake included, growing up with comics was based on, getting comics with your friends, sitting in somebody's house, reading your comics, and then throwing them in the middle of your friends and then letting them read your comics and you read their comics and you talked about comics. And I think with the advent of podcasting, this is what Jake and I are structuring around. It's just, I always refer to it as hanging out at Jake's house and reading and making comics. And that's that next level that ends up happening. You start making your own little comics by folding a piece of typing paper in half and starting at the top and squaring out and everything. But yeah, I just really wanted to have something on the channel in a video that explains CROM the Barbarian and its upcoming release of CROM Anthology. So this is just a little scrapbook that I put together. It's over 450 pages of collected works that I have found over the years that I want to have included in CROM Anthology or worked in a variant version, or leap off of because it's in the public domain, or have somebody from the past work on it. But this is what I've been kind of using is to ground me in moving forward from the success of this. So CROMthebarbarian.com is where you can go and grab a copy. After August 31st, you're just not going to have the ability to get a hold of the guest artists. So the guest artists I had come in and work with me was Ken Landgraf, and I do want to work with these guys again too. So having as many sales as possible will help out. Adam Dodds, David Molina, Jason Schoonover, and Drawn Sword. There's links down below to all of these individuals. They are amazing artists. I have been following them for years. I reached out and said, hey, would you like to work on a pinup and even share your love for certain sorcery and fantasy and comic books and stuff? And so I do have a lot of videos that are up there and everything. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to share, Jake. If you have any other questions, I can't answer, but I'm good.
I had a question, but I forgot it.
We were just talking about that because you started drawing what I'm assuming is a CROM there.
Yeah. Yeah. So for people that don't know what we're laughing about, we were just talking about the rhythm and the flow of our podcast, and it's an odd thing when you're double tasking.
Yep.
When you're drawing and you're talking, and then you're also having a conversation. Now, what Kurt just got off his chest was a lot there, and I think he went from like one to about 16 different topics before he threw back to me. Um, and the reason why it's so funny because we were just
And I
talking
didn't do
about
it. And I didn't even do it on purpose.
we were, and I was like, "What type of coffee bean are you on, man?" It's like,
as much
um,
as it is the coffee, I just get. I've always been an excitable person, and I don't want to be apologetic for it, but I know it can be annoying to people. It is a part of my personality, but when I'm excited, coffee maybe amplifies it by like a percentage or
right,
two. I just get more and more and more excited, and I want to share, and I want to talk, and I want you to know about this, and I'm working on it. I
right.
am working on it. I am working on it, and working with
Well,
you, I think is
there's
working on it. So
yeah. I mean, when someone's watching a YouTube video, they can always hit the little dial, they hit the button to go 10 seconds into the future, right?
yeah, yeah,
I mean
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what whenever I was watching comic kayfabe, they would be like, I'd be like, oh wow, I want to see this. It's like the greatest hits of Gene Day, and then they start putting up all the plugs about like Street Angel and all this stuff,
Yep,
which I've seen like
yep,
55 times already. So,
yep.
and I'm like, all right, so I just hit fast forward, and then you get to the stuff that you're interested in. But, that this is a great project here. Like I was saying at the beginning, and it's a little tricky with public domain because excuse me. There's a big question of how closely do you adhere to the original concept, and like one day, when Kurt and I are dead and buried or cremated or whatever, my ashes are going to be strewn by a drone or something. um One day someone's going to come along and they're going to be doing Turbo Pit Fighter comics, and they're going to do something that maybe I wouldn't have done, and take it in a whole new direction. But that's the whole point about public domain. They say that it's a good thing that properties go public domain after a while, because you need that freshness, you need that other person to come along and care about it, and release something, make some new
Add to it.
comics.
Add
Yeah, I
to it.
mean, the funny thing about the future is, we don't even know how easy it's going to be, to create something. There might be a future where, somebody will come along and say, "Hey, Chat GPT, make me a comic. No, make it an animated video of CROM the Barbarian, and it's going to be 3 minutes long. And in the beginning, CROM is going to be approaching a town on horseback, and he's going to notice that there's black fire emanating from beyond the walls, and then all of a sudden, he looks over the ridge, and there's invading army attacking from the south, and he says, "Wow, maybe I shouldn't, go in right now." And he turns around, and then all of a sudden, there's another force coming around the other flank, and it just goes on and on. So there might be a submit button, and then this whole thing is just created, and the only question will be like, all right, what's the character? Is this a property with a name? Is it just going to change the name from Conan to Crom? Um, that was an interesting thing that came up when Kurt was talking about the history of Robert Howard versus Gardner Fox. Gardner Fox beat Robert Howard, or Conan was not the first to comics. Crom was the first to comics. But in changing the name from Conan to Crom to avoid any copyright disputes with the Robert E. Howard, estate, um, he chose something that it wasn't like Freddy the Barbarian. It was Crom the Barbarian, something that was specifically mentioned in the Conan world as a god, that Conan worships, and most people know it by like Conan's interjections, right? Every time he drops something on his foot, he goes, "By
Crom.
Crom, yes, by Crom," and
Crom.
technically, that does bring it into the Robert E. Howard pantheon and the world and everything. And I guess there was never any kind of, legal action taken. So, you know,
Nobody
Gardner
knows.
Fox.
There was
Well, we don't.
definitely not a lot of. I guess there wasn't enough response, from the publications, because the comic actually for CROM the Barbarian, the first two issues were inside Out of This World Adventures, and then they did a comic book Out of This World, and the third comic, the third Kothar, excuse me, jeez, the third Krob story was in comic book form. He did shorten his hair down to somebody, who looks a lot like Flash Gordon. So, they were constantly bouncing around, trying to capture, people to get that next Superman, Batman, Flash, whatever it was, Flash, Hawkman, who, Flash and Hawkman were created by Fox, and obviously very, very, very successful.
The
Um,
original Flash, the Golden
yeah,
Age
yeah,
Flash,
exactly. And yep, 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 yep,
but
yep. So anyhow,
the guy with the plate on his head.
yeah, I guess, the whole right. But so the thing though for me was exactly what you're kind of leading us
Looting.
into. Yeah,
Yeah.
looting. It's I'm not here to steal and own Crom the Barbarian. I don't claim any ownership. The work that I've even done, I'm publishing in a free way to help somebody start building on top of it. The only thing I really want to get recognition for when it's all said and done, and I can do it well enough, and I know if I have somebody like yourself, Jake, a part of the team building towards the connection, let's say the connecting back of Crom as a dark god that somebody like Kothar, damn it, Conan, Conan will Conan will pray to. That is something I would love to have in the annals of time, but I don't need to be the guy who I don't even really want to get into it.
Well,
The
you're kind of championing this property that was laying
and
forgotten. You're
and
bringing
Fox and
right, and
Fox.
this isn't like, oh, I'm scheming so that I can take
No,
this property and insert
no,
my name. No, you're trying to get
no.
a whole bunch of different people
Mhm.
involved. You're trying to make this a rallying cry for anybody that wants to do sword and sorcery,
Yes.
and we can't do Conan because that's a updated copyright. Like I think Dark Horse is doing Conan now, and Marvel's done Conan, and all these third-party indie companies have had a turn. Um, the interesting thing though, and you say that there's never been any legal action between the Robert E. Howard estate
Oh, I
and
don't
the
know. I don't
Gardner
know.
Farm. Well, we know that Gardner Fox continued to put out CROM. So that's what we know, right? And
No, no,
so
no,
why
no.
don't,
It
why don't you
ends
tell
with
us
it
all of
ends
the
no, it ends with um, the the third issue. I ended up converting a old '70s. It was called Zangar comic done by Jack Katz. And it was Gardner F. Fox and Jack Katz. And then I photoshopped out Zangar and putting Crumb in order to give us, because the story reads way more like a sword and sorcery story than it did a jungle.
So, as the foremost expert, give us the
Okay.
complete compendium of Gardner Fox releases of
I will.
Crom the
Uh,
Barbarian, and we're talking only about comics because he didn't do pro. He or did he? So tell us everything Gardner Fox released under the name Crom.
I just did. They're all in here. It's only in here. So
Right,
he in the late '60s put out a character called Kothar, the Barbarian, and did 5 books of Kothar. Pastiche, Robert E. Howard, Conan, pastiche books, because Conan was being released by Sprang and through Lancer Books, these Conan with these phrasetic
paperback.
covers,
Yeah,
paperbacks. So it was all prose. He does a follow up character called Kyric, Warlock Warrior. Less warlock and more warrior in it. He does 4 books on that, and then in the later part of the '70s, I think, is a follow, like almost right at the end of the Kyric, Gary Gygax of TSR has Dragon magazine, and he wants contributing fiction added to it, and so we get 10, 10 or 11 Nile of the Far Travels short stories. Now, I am the custodian of the Gardner Francis Fox Library, link below. These are all been transcribed. You can get them as EPUB books. You can also get them as printed books from the Gardner Francis Fox Library and Amazon. Um, you know, they read exactly the way you think they will. A gentleman that I just watched today who reviewed Fox's Warrior of Larn called it popcorn fiction. In other words, if you just want to disconnect for 2 or 3 hours to read these very short novella, you know, fun fiction stuff. It's almost like fan fiction too. They're perfect, but don't think you're going to walk away with any like, oh, this is so comparable
right,
to J.R. Tolkien and
right,
J.R. George R. R. Martin, and you're not going to get
right.
that, but they are fun, and that's what I'm all about. I can
Yeah.
guarantee fun, and if you do purchase a copy and you find it to be horrendously not fun, just I'll refund you. I'm not trying to take your money here. I'm just going to ask you to get this in the hands of somebody else that probably would enjoy it more than you. But if you look at the cover and the covers of the guest artists that I have on here, I don't know why you would buy it without it being very evident that it's DIY. It's just good. It's just good classic fun, and I want to keep that stuff alive. And I want to work with other, and I know there's other people out there that want this kind of stuff and more of them. So, but you know what, Jake? I think we can let these guys get going, unless you have one last thing to contribute, because I don't want to hold these people up. Love to get them back to reading comics, especially CROM the Barbarian or Savage Sword of Conan, which this is really based off of. My love for Savage Sword of Conan and Heavy Metal magazine. But do you have anything on the way out?
Yeah. If you back up about 3 or 4 topics, I did. Yeah, I just want to say that. Um, so my question was whether Gardner Fox continued to use Crom. So you're saying that he used the
No.
name Crom, and then he used the name Crom once to release a comic story, and then he released stuff under different names of different characters.
Yeah. Very little difference between those
So it is
characters.
possible. It is possible that he moved. Oh, of course, but it is possible that he moved away from the name because of pushback.
No, no, not at all.
No. Oh,
No, I
right.
just think,
Okay.
the biggest thing people have to realize when it came to Gardner Francis Fox, as a paperback novelist, and most of those guys, if not all of them, they were wordsmiths. They were hammering out pages and words to get paid, because that's how it was. It was the same structure as the pulps. You got paid a penny a word. So the more words you got, the more pennies you got. So a lot of these books, to be really quite honest with you, are bloated, and they steer you off in different directions, because Fox is just writing, and this is a little historical thing. He never typed; he wrote on yellow legal pads, and he would buy stacks and stacks of them. Then his wife was a trained secretary, so she would type out the script. He would go back in and pencil in and out little edits, and he would then
Corrections. Yes.
sell his. He had a agent, and that agent would then go sell that manuscript, and then that was it. There was nothing other than the success of that book selling, and them wanting more books to sell in paperback, just like the pulps and comic books. There was no framework. It is factual from the family that I've had connections with since the launch of the Gardner Francis Fox Library. Gardner Fox's absolute core and passion was Edgar Rice Burroughs, but more importantly, it was Robert E. Howard and the sword and sorcery tradition. So he always, if he could, write things back towards that. Like Hawkman, I see it here and there, but it's that time shifting story type of thing where it's just, yeah, but it's all good stuff. It's good entertainment. That's all it is. It's not this localized, earth shattering George R. R. Martin, and all the stuff that everybody seems to be wanting in the public, pantheons and stuff. Where I would rather just be in the dirty boxes at the bottom of a comic, on the floor in the back of a comic book store, looking for stuff that nobody else wanted, because that's, to me, where all the entertainment really is. So, but yep, that's, like I said, that's what I got.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, Gardner Fox, really interesting guy. So, is there anywhere where his papers are archived or anything? Is
Yes,
anything like that?
The Oregon Archives. Yes, and I have connections with them. That he had sold everything, not sold, excuse me. He had donated everything through his attorney, I think in the late 70s, early 80s, because he was retiring. I think it was 82.
Uh huh.
But there is a great book, and I'm going to flash up the cover and a link to Jennifer DeRoss's All Star Heroes. And it's a very nice quick read, but it gives a really excellent understanding of like Fox and what he was involved in from 1937 to 1982 when he passes away, because he was always involved in comics and writing stories. And
So
I
he did
just think he
pulps,
was,
paperbacks. He did paperbacks.
yep,
He did pulps. He did comics,
anything
and he
for a
goes
dollar,
back
anything
quite a
for a
while.
dollar,
Quite a
anything
while.
for a
Invents the
dollar. Yeah.
Flash, Hawkman, unbelievable story.
Yep.
Um,
I mean, I think
and
he just really was able to tap into worlds, if you will, an inner richness of worlds, like Robert E. Howard and Edgar Rice Burroughs.
yeah, I mean, he was right there at the beginning of a genre, and that, and I guess he recognized very early on, wow, this, I mean, it's like being Bob Marley to what Bob Marley is to reggae, right? That's what Robert E. Howard was to, barbarians or sword and sorcery, right? It was like, the definitive character, and So Gardner Fox, gets published in comics with a Conan-like character, and that was CROM. And so this is the public domain character that people can get involved with. If you're a creator and you like the genre, you want to do a pinup, you want to do maybe like a short, maybe you want to haul off and spend 3 years doing a graphic novel. Hey, it's up to you. But
Exactly.
you can join the Crom world, or else you can just
Yep.
like get your Scrabble tiles out and jumble them up and then throw them down and then make your own barbarian with the name that's spelled out. So you choose. But but it sounds, yeah, I mean, it sounds like he created Crom, and then he created a bunch of other names and he kept changing them, which is weird. Maybe he was like, trying out different things to see, if something really connected. To me, Crom sounds great. But there was that angle that connected it to
I
Conan
agree.
because it was
I agree.
mentioned, and so that to me was always fascinating too. Like, how does
No,
that
I
work
see.
out with the two different estates?
Right.
So,
With that being
I think,
said,
yes. So with all that being said, folks, feel free to check out our comic book, our other comic book, the Making of Turbo Pit Fighter, is a podcast where we create and we live draw in pencils and ink simultaneously in split screen. We're creating the Turbo Pit Fighter world. It's if you like the Road Warrior and post-apocalyptic death fights and landscapes, wastelands. This is your item there. We also do creator interviews. Feel free to look us up if you're a creator and you have a project that you want to plug. As long as you don't work for Marvel or DC. um, and as long as your project is not work for Marvel and DC. If you have worked for Marvel and DC, that's even better. But indie comics only, please. And check out our flip throughs that we do on comics that influence. You never know what we're going to open up out of our bag of tricks. But today it was Crom, and the collections that Kurt is working on, and he's casting a net. So if anybody else is interested, come into the tent and look up Kurt and find out how you can get involved, or maybe just do it on your own and send him a link. But one way or the other, please enjoy Crom, and find it at your local internet link. So Kurt,
CROMthebarbarian.com. So when we do
right?
record our next comics that influence, I'm actually going to be doing Elric Melnamone by Roy Thomas, P. Craig Russell, and Michael T. Gilbert. So this is one of the books that absolutely cooked, baked, and fried me into the sword and sorcery world, next to Savage Sword of Conan. So with that being said, Jake, thank you so very much for spending some time again with me talking about my project and the love and support that you've given. But that's what I got. We'll let these people get going.
Bye, everybody. See you next Sunday.